Hi, I'm Ryan. Today I'd like to look at Supergiant's new game Pyre in how it structures the gradual complexity of its ritualistic competitions. Like the two previous Supergiant games, the world building is superb, the characters are well written and likeable, and it's beautiful to look at. I could easily spend a long time talking about how the game frames failure or the narrative structure of the game. However, I want to focus on how well Pyre paces the layering of ludic complexity. The term ludic is used to indicate elements within the game system which afford and structure play, like Mario's jump or the movement of chess pieces. Ludic complexity refers to how a game system may contain layers of tactical and strategic engagement. The pacing of Pyre is well developed, as it introduces layers of complexity to the game slowly so that players can fit them within their strategies. Gradually adding these mechanical layers instead of dropping them on the player all at once ensures that the player is continually challenged and the outcome of the game is uncertain. Pyre is a team-based RPG set in a fantasy purgatory called the Downside. Citizens from a country called the Commonwealth are exiled to the Downside for crimes such as insubordination and the production of books which have been outlawed. Freedom may be granted to exiles who take part in a ritualistic sport devised by the founders of the Commonwealth. These exiled gather together to form teams of 3 to challenge each other in a ritual game to win the favour of the founders. With enough favour, a team may compete to send one of its exiled free from purgatory and return to society in an exalted position. The player takes control of a team called the Nightwings, against which all other teams must prove themselves. The sport most resembles basketball, where one team must place a celestial orb in the pyre of another. However, during the course of the game, exiles can be temporarily banished, an array of special abilities can be used, and the objective is to extinguish the opponent's pyre instead of running up a score. The player controls one exile at a time, switching between them to gain more tactical positions or advance the orb towards the opponent's pyre. Each exile has an aura which encircles them. When this aura comes in contact with an opposing exile, they are temporarily banished. Exiles with bigger auras can banish those with smaller auras by simply walking into them. Exiles with smaller auras, on the other hand, tend to be faster to make up for this. The initial complexity of this ritual is compounded by passing plays, individual banishment times, and movement speed. The layers of complexity are primarily introduced in the first half of the game, with additional elements added periodically in the second half. The first half of the game is narratively structured through a pilgrimage of the Nightwings towards the mountain at which the founders will decide who will be returned to society. This pilgrimage takes the Nightwings throughout the geographically varied lands of the Downside, like the Sea of Solace and Black Basin. Each visit to a new location suggests a narrative passage of time to travel there. When at these locations, the Nightwings will visit places of narrative significance, spend time searching for objects of power, or discuss the rituals to be performed. Throughout the journey, new characters are introduced into the team, each with their own abilities pertaining to the ritual. These new characters are introduced at new locations within the Downside. The distance between these locations lengthens the journey to the mountain and thus specially paces the introduction of new characters. Other elements of mechanical depth are introduced at a similar pace, which allows time for players to get used to these new tactical possibilities. The following elements of ludic complexity are introduced slowly throughout the game. It is important to note, however, that other forms of depth exist in addition to these that will not be explored here, like running, jumping, character stamina, the leveling system, and Volfred's Planner, which is revealed later in the game and serves larger, strategic purposes. Initially, the player can only select from 3 exiles during a ritual, separated by their respective statistics. Quickness relates to an exile's movement speed across the map. Glory relates to how much damage they can incur upon an opponent's pyre. Presence relates to the size of their aura, and Hope relates to each exile's respawn time after being banished. Tactical thought is initially required in relation to how a player will use each exile given their respective statistics. Jodariel has a large aura useful in banishing opponents, but is slow. Rucky is the opposite, with a smaller aura, yet he is quick on his paws. The first new character to be introduced reverses the balance statistics of the third character, Hedwyn, to provide an alternate approach in accompanying the power of Jodariel and the swiftness of Rucky. Differences in character abilities are phased in slowly. The first new character of the Stowaway shares the same character ability as the initial 3 exiles. When the next character, Tizo, joins, his ability broadens the tactical possibilities open to the player. It involves self-banishment of the character, but in so doing a large aura blast occurs which can envelop all of the opposing team. In addition to this, Tizo's jump ability is a sustained hover which allows him to avoid many ground-based aura attacks. Following this, the next character to join is Sir Gilman, who affords an offensive ability which can quickly banish an opponent and move him away from following conflicts. This trend continues with each new character that is introduced into the team. In addition to this, when a character levels up their abilities, they can take on extra effects. For example, when a certain perk has been chosen for Pamitha, she can avoid banishment when attacking an opponent's Pyre by flying into it with the Celestial Orb. With the introduction of Sir Gilman, a new aura type is introduced. The regular auras of Jodariel and Tizo are centered on and follow their respective characters, but the aura Sir Gilman leaves an aura trail behind him, which when crossed by an opponent will banish them. This type of aura does not pass through regular auras, and so the character can risk banishment when advancing on an opponent. This aura type is shared by Bertrude and Pamitha when they join the Nightwings. Talismans are an element of ludic complexity which can augment the statistics of characters or their abilities. They can also be used to gain more money when banishing opponents in the rituals. More complex and powerful talismans are revealed throughout the game, giving the player another array of configurable options for their team. The opposing teams are initially configured to present 3 of the same type of character with similar stats and abilities. This serves to reinforce the lessons learned about these types of characters and abilities. However, as the player progresses through the first half of the game, these team rosters increasingly alternate the types of characters they field, which requires a tactical flexibility from the player. Further to this, certain teams foreshadow abilities and aura types to be gained by the player in the first half of the game. For instance, the player engages in a ritual against the Withdrawn, who have aura types similar to Sir Gilman, and preface the Nightwings meeting with him. In the second half of the game, a staple of Supergiant games is implemented, the XP Boost difficulty system. These take the form of 12 different Titan Stars, which, when invoked before a ritual, can give statistic boosts to opponents or decreases to the Nightwings in exchange for experience point boosts if the ritual is won. These Titan Stars are incrementally introduced, allowing players to gradually explore the effects they might have on each ritual and in combination with other Titan Stars. Feats add another layer of complexity in requiring the player to achieve performative flourishes within a ritual to earn gold. Like the Titan Stars, these are optional ludic elements which the player can engage with, but they add a small performative complexity onto rituals. The final layer of complexity involves the larger strategic concerns of the game. Upon completion of the pilgrimage and successful defeat of their opponents at the summit of the mountain, the player will then need to select a member of the Nightwings to ascend from the purgatory of the downside. That character will then remain unavailable for rituals for the rest of the game. This is an added layer of complexity because it confronts the player with larger strategic concerns over who they want to continue competing in the rituals. This choice is presented multiple times to the player throughout the second half of the game. Now, it is worth noting that it also confronts the player with narrative complexities regarding their attachment to particular characters, but that is not the primary concern here. Completing Pyre can take anywhere between 12 and 16 hours depending on the player's focus on the lore. The first half of this time is dedicated to the pilgrimage and the slow introduction of characters, abilities and auras, which add layers of play possibilities to the rituals. The second half of Pyre presents the player with increased difficulty options between Titan Stars, feats and the apotheosis of the Nightwings. Because each element is slowly introduced, this never feels like an overbearing tutorial, but an expansion of the player's freedom to express themselves through the game system. Pyre takes a simple ludic premise and through great ludic pacing makes it exciting and crucially uncertain throughout the entire game. Thank you so much for watching. Next week I'll be talking about Myth in Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and the week after that I'll be uploading a video on Subsurface Circular. If you'd like to be notified when both of these videos drop, then click on the subscribe button below.